Hi, everyone. To those who have joined in, Shanice, Maritz, nice to have you guys with us. It is Monday evening, the 6th of June, 2022, and want to get stuck in chatting about basically the last session, or the last section of the portfolio of evidence. Thanks, Shanice. Yeah, hi. Before I kick off though, either of you guys, any questions or comments, anything you want to raise or ask before we get stuck in, or is everything all right or cool?
Hi Tim, how you doing?
Fine, thanks, fine. You okay?
No, I'm good, thanks. No stress,
Cool, cool.
Tim, I'm just gonna ask you questions as we go along, because I don't want to
Yes,
bore you with all the questions in the beginning. Maybe when you give maybe you give me some answers as we go as well.
for sure.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, well, let's get stuck in then. It is recording, obviously, for those who are not here, and hopefully they'll get a chance to catch up. I don't think tonight will be long because there's not too much to cover, and I did go through most of it previously, but let's see how we go. Let me share the whole screen. I'm going to share the whole screen. So that's now, hopefully, we're going to get the tunnel of, yes, there's the tunnel of death. And let me override that and put this on. So it's Collab 8, I think it is. It's technically it's a national support session in NSS, and it's the, as I said, 6th of June. What's been handed in so far, obviously, is your POE task 1, which was done 12th of April. It was due in end of May. You had to hand in POE task 2, and then this is due next Wednesday, the 15th. I think it's a Wednesday, the 15th of June. You have to get that submitted. And tonight's our NSS session that we're going through here. And just a reminder, 9 p.m. hand-in time on due date. Obviously, you can hand in before then, but that's the kind of final time cutoff. And if you're just a few seconds late, then it can't be marked without you lodging some kind of request or appeal. Right, the final task, and it's worth 35% overall for your course mark. So as we said, your ICE tasks are 10%. Task 1 was 25. Task 2 was 30%. This task is worth 35, which then you put those all together, adds up to the total of 100. So there are 4 key questions here. The main question is the risk register, which we'll go through. Then there's submission of tasks 1 and 2 for 10 marks, submission of ICE tasks for 5 marks, and a reflection report for 10 marks. So let's go through those in a bit more detail. The risk register, what I'm saying is see pages 166, 167 if you've got the textbook for that. It says create a risk register giving a minimum of 3 risks for each of the categories listed below, and there are 5 categories: financial, scheduling, performance, operational, and external hazard risks. Now, just some broad guidelines. There are, by the way, some overlap between some of these risk areas, and I'm not going to be fussy if you've given a risk which logically belongs in one area but logically might also belong more so in another area. I'm not going to fuss too much about that, provided it's not you wouldn't put weather risk under financial. I mean, that I would clearly mark that as wrong. But some risks fall under performance and operations. So don't worry too much about getting those exactly right. So financial risks are things that might arise that would have a direct financial impact on the budget of the project, sending you way over budget, or possibly even potentially under budget, which could in some cases be a problem. It's not usually an issue, but there might be exceptional circumstances. But usually you're looking at something that's going to have a negative financial impact, and what are those sorts of risks? Scheduling risks are things that would affect the deadline of the project and forcing you to delay the endpoint of the project in some way or other. Performance risks have to do with poor implementation and or processes around running the project. Things like poor workmanship, failing to deliver to specification, those sorts of things. Going back to scheduling risk, a delay in materials being delivered to site, that would also be overlap with an operational risk. But let's say there's key materials that you're waiting for to move forward with on your project, and they are delayed in arriving. The supplier gets them onto site, 2 or 3 weeks late. That would have an impact on the deadline of your project. It doesn't affect performance in the sense that you are, the materials are there, you can still finish the work. Financially, it might not have an impact other than the delay messing up your finances possibly. But really, a delay in delivery of materials would be falling under the category of a scheduling issue. So performance is poor implementation or processes, poor workmanship, failing to deliver to spec, and even at times, taking too long to do the work. So that might have performance and even operational work. So the job gets done, it gets done correctly, it gets done well, but it just takes too long. That would affect scheduling, and it would overlap with performance and operations. So as I say, some of these risks, just choose whatever risk you're talking about, choose a category that makes sense for you, that you can justify, and put it under that category. Operational risks might be a lack of resources, including human resources, so key skilled staff not available, key equipment not being available, those sorts of things. And then obviously external hazards, we're looking here at things like the weather, external issues, changes possibly in government regulations that might be that affects your project. So I'm throwing out examples here. Give it some thought, do some Googling around that. And what you've got to have in this risk register or risk table, so we're calling it a risk register, what you have to have is the ID, risk ID, which is just a number, and that number is for kind of record keeping purposes through the project. So in real life, you would have a risk register, and you would say if you're emailing somebody, you'd say, I'm talking about risk 5.1 or risk 3.2, and whatever that risk is. It's a way of identifying it, giving it a unique number, together with a description of what the risk is. Okay, so this would be a clear description of what that risk is. Then the next column would be its trigger and probability. So the trigger is what gives rise to the risk, what makes it happen, what would be its the catalyst or the trigger point for that risk. And then what is the probability or chance of it happening, and that would be a score out of 10. Okay. Then the impact is what is the consequence of this risk if it happens? What could go wrong? If this risk happens, what impact or consequences is it going to have on the project? And again, you might score that out of 10. So very high impact to measure. And again, with all of these things, you kind of guesstimate, you're giving an educated guess as to how serious you think it might be or might not be. And that's based on common sense, experience, knowledge from other people, and so on. So imagine that you've chatted with your project team and outside experts and the like. I'll give you an example. For a friend of mine, he's an architect, and he's been involved with a project. It's a house build of quite a fancy house. And the contractor that got appointed to do the building was not very experienced, didn't really know everything that was required for this type of building. It required some pretty advanced concrete work, throwing of concrete slabs with reinforcing steel and the like. And the architect said to the client, I do not recommend this contractor because he doesn't have the skills required to be confident that he's going to get the job right when it comes to throwing concrete. Now, all of this has come out after the issue arose, but he did warn them up front. That the architect warned the client and said, I would suggest you don't use this contractor. Of course, the client did use that contractor because his price was good, and I think because he was some kind of connection or friend. And what happened is one of the main pieces of concrete, which is structural, it's a load-bearing slab. It's absolutely critical you get it right. They messed up the concrete, the throwing of the concrete. They didn't finish. They didn't have enough concrete on the day to finish it off, so it actually got thrown in two segments, which completely compromises the strength of the slab. It's all meant to dry and set as one single slab. So it's actually got a break in it because the first section was thrown, then they came the next day with another load of concrete to finish it off. And obviously the first batch had dried already. So serious consequences. So now it's a case of calling in structural engineers to do an ultrasound inspection. That costs a fortune to get that done. And then if it's ruled that that concrete slab isn't strong enough, then they've got to demolish it, and that's going to take a long time to do, and then rebuild it, which pay twice. Now, obviously, there's a blame shift game going on. Now, that's a performance risk, possibly an operational risk, but it's mainly a performance risk. And these things happen. This is a real site. And some client trying to save money, and they've ended up going to have to pay more money for the money they've saved. Okay, so the number, it's the identity of the risk or ID number, and the description, very clear. Please put the description of the risk in, or the label of it, so it's clear what it is. The trigger and probability, the impact. And then the threat score would be, it's a calculation based on a combination of probability and impact, and it's usually just the two multiplied together. And then you would describe your mitigation factors, your actions you're going to take to either prevent the risk or deal with the consequences of the risk if it happens, or minimize the risk. So you can prevent the risk, you can minimize it, or you deal with the consequences if it does happen, and try to focus on the risks with higher scores. In other words, the threat score, the ones that are highest, you need to give a little bit of attention to, because those are the ones that are most dangerous to your project. So again, this is just a couple of examples from a possible table that you might use. Let me just change my color here. So you've got your ID. So exchange rate fluctuations with its number. What is the trigger and probability? Any significant international event might trigger a change in exchange rate. We give that a score of 7 out of 10 of probability. That's quite a high chance of it happening. Its impact on the project is very high, 8 out of 10. What we're saying here is that the project is very dependent on buying things with foreign exchange, with you're paying for a lot of the project items in dollars or pounds or whatever it might be. And therefore, if something goes wrong in the exchange rate, it's going to have a high impact. If your project budget or your project requirements do not depend on imports, and there's just a very small fraction of the budget that's reliant on dollars or pounds, purchasing stuff, then your impact here would be much lower, and that might only be a 1 or a 2 out of 10, for example, and then your score would be low. Now, this way the score works is typically 7 multiplied by 8 gives you a score, and anything where it starts to get to tick up. Now, obviously, 10 times 10 is 100, but even something like that has, say, a probability of 6, and let's say an impact of 7, that's 42, and you might say that sounds quite low, but anything above 30, 35 starts to have an impact. Okay, so, or a potential impact. It's not always wise to look at the combined score. Sometimes you might have, let's say, a score on the probability side of 2 out of 10, but let's say the impact was 9 out of 10. Okay, so that's only, if you multiply those two together, that's only 18. However, the fact that its impact is very high, 9 out of 10, means even though the chance is low, we still want to do something about it, because we just can't afford to let it happen, or to live with the consequences. We do have to have some plan B. Even though there's a small chance of it happening, we must account for it in some way. So the scoring is not always, doesn't always tell the full story, that total score there, that multiplying the two together. So here's a mitigation or treatment of the risk. Keep an eye on international events and buy hedge foreign exchange if needed. In other words, buy ahead of time if things are looking wobbly. Okay. External hazard risk, weather, bad weather disrupting the event. Look at 3-day forecasts. If there's a 3-day forecast that indicates severe weather, that would be the trigger for dealing with this risk. The probability of it happening, depending on the season, is 4 out of 10. Impact would be 7 out of 10. Again, that's a lowest score, but I would still want to have a plan B if it's a big outdoor event with hundreds of people. And our treatment is to set up stretch tarpaulin covers and gazebos for the entranceway if the trigger happens, if it goes ahead, that the weather forecast these days are pretty accurate, and you can pretty much rely on them. Okay, any questions around the risk thing? Let me just stop sharing that. Any questions from you guys on the risk register?
No, I think you pretty much covered it for me on this side.
Okay.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Shanice. Yeah, it is a large chunk of marks. I think I said in the last session, I don't really agree with the way this assignment has been structured for this time, to put so many marks into one question. You know, if you get it right, you can score very highly on this whole assignment question, because of just getting this one question right. And it's not that difficult. It just requires a little bit of, a little bit of time to sit through and methodically think through, but it's not complicated and complex and overwhelming to deal with. So don't panic about it. Just sit, and work through it methodically. Right, so that's the risk question. Then questions 2.1 and 2.2 relate to the what's called the kind of resubmission of your first tasks. Now, let me just make this clear here. It's the collection of POE task 1 and 2 activities submitted in the semester. Ensure that you submit. Part A is the marked POE task showing the final mark and the lecturer's feedback. Now, I've crossed that out very specifically, because if you see the note below, it says this: you do not need to resubmit. I'm writing this, I'm adding this in, because this assignment was put together in the days before online, and you had to hand in a paper file with everything in it. I have access to everything you've submitted already, because it's all online and digitally done. So please do not, where's my mouse cursor gone? There it is. So you do not need to resubmit your entire POE task 1 and POE task 2. They're already available on the system. I've marked them. I've made my comments. Just submit the sections in which you have made some corrections. Now, how do we go about doing that? So firstly, don't resubmit everything. Secondly, put together your updated and corrected POE tasks as per the lecturer's feedback. Highlight the areas that were corrected. I'm saying in a different color. It really helps me to pick out things that you've corrected and changed and improved, and provide an explanation, a short, short couple of sentences of what you did to fix that. Okay. Now, it's 5 marks for POE task 1 and another 5 marks for POE task 2. So it's a total of 10 marks. POE task 1, POE task 2, 5 marks each, total of 10 marks. And I've put a note at the bottom here. These two activities, as I said, account for 10% of the final task mark, and therefore just about 3.5% of your final course mark. It's 10% of 35 marks, which is 3.5 out of your total course mark. Why I'm highlighting that, and I've said this before, and I repeat it again, and the guys who don't attend these sessions are going to miss this. They're going to miss two things, actually. They're going to miss the point that I'm saying here. You don't need to resubmit everything you've done already, because it's all there on the system already. You just resubmit or rather you submit your corrections. And secondly, they're missing out. My advice here is, as I've said before, I'm saying to you, don't spend hours and hours on this, because all you are adjusting is this 3.5% there. It doesn't actually make a difference to the mark you got. And I've said this again, forgive me for repeating it, but if you got 72% on task 1 of your assignment and you got 53% on task 2 of your assignment, going back and making corrections does not, I don't go back and change that mark for you guys. So if you got 45% and now you submit everything perfect and corrected, your mark of 45 still stands. All you're going to get is the 3.5. And by the way, these 10 marks are pretty much almost giveaway marks, in the sense that if you do submit the basics here, you're going to get almost all, if not all, of these marks for that. And the way it's structured is you actually get, out of the 5 marks, you get 2 for just, or 2 or 3 for just kind of going through the motions of doing this. So I'm suggesting, and I'll say this to everyone, don't go through and correct everything where I made comments. Just take a sample of things, 2 or 3 things where I made suggestions or comments on your first things. And by the way, if you got a good mark, if you got anything above 70, 75% on your previous assignments, I had very little to say in terms of corrections. So there's really not much you can do to fix things. It's really, if you got down into the 60s and 50s and below, then I would say this is what's wrong and how you can improve it. Take a couple of those things, show that you've thought through it and you've learned from that, and you can resubmit some corrections and you will get the marks here. Okay, so I hope that's clear for these 2 things. Any questions while we're on this?
Item, yes. Okay, so here's one of my first questions: is where do I find your feedback on my student portal or in Learn?
Okay, you need to open your assignment, and within your assignment that you submitted, I've put little yellow sticky notes with my comments on. Now,
where do I open the assignment? Do I go to marks or do I go in the course?
I think you go to, I'm actually not 100% sure, but I think you go to marks, and then if you hover over your mark or you click on it, there's a little down arrow or something there, and you should be able to see, I think it says view attempt or see mark details or something like that.
Yeah, because all this is giving me, because I'm in it actually now, it says just view a rubric. And when I go in here, that's just the rubric. There's nothing.
Okay,
really
let me go there and see what it's telling us. Here we go. Okay, let me go to, I've now got everybody's things. So it's Marisa Marat.
Yes, Marat.
Okay, where are we?
It was on the previous page there. I just saw it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so up. More up.
Oh, there. Sorry. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Forgive me, I was getting confused. It's alphabetical bar. So if I come across here, I don't know if you get this. So you got 83. If I click on that and I say attempt, I click on attempt. This is what it shows me, but obviously I've got access to all the students because I'm the facilitator.
Yes.
Then it opens, there's your Gantt chart. And if I open the actual POE, it shows it here. Now, I don't know if you've got access to that. You should have access, because most students, all students do have access in some way or other to getting hold of this.
Yeah, my pages are completely different to yours.
So if
I go
there's
to,
the ticks and stuff, and you'll see there's a little yellow sticky tag here, and it's just there. I've just given, you know, got 8 out of 10 for that. There's my comments on the right hand side, and as I scroll down, I just made a comment here for regard to your network diagram. It's still loading. What's there? Okay, so you say you're not seeing that at all.
yeah, I'm not finding that. I'm struggling. Bit devil.
That's
Okay,
weird.
I've got another student here with me, my girlfriend. She says she
Right.
thinks she knows where to find it.
Okay. Look, if you're really stuck, then WhatsApp or email me, and I will download and send you it.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks. Ah, there, I got it. I just opened it up. Okay, what did I
Right.
do? I just double clicked.
Oh, it says,
Sorry.
yeah, and Shanice is putting in the comments here, double click on your assignment. You go to
I
marks,
think on
double click on
the
your assignment. It'll take you to this place.
there, yes, okay, I got it. Okay, great stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, ours looks a bit different to yours.
The other one is say
So,
view mark details, and it comes this, and then you say view attempts, and it shows it that way.
okay.
Okay, but this is the marking version that I see. So just to highlight again, this is the wrong one. Here we go. That's that. Okay, here's the full thing. And as you scroll down, I guess taking a while to.
I can
But you
see
should see the little
exactly.
yellow.
Yes, I've got it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
great stuff.
So the little yellow
Okay.
sticky notes highlights what I've stated. Okay, and that should give you the chance to work with stuff. Cool.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Tim.
Glad you found that. Cool. Okay, so coming back to this then, let's just come back here. So, you know, as I said, if you've got roughly 70% and up, certainly 80% and up, if you've got marks like that, then I'm not going to have many comments in terms of making corrections, because those are pretty good marks. So happy with those. Okay. So that's question 2.1, 2.2. Now question 3 is for just 5 marks, and this is a little bit similar to the previous question. It's a resubmission, but again, I've crossed this out. It says here in the section, submit a copy of any 4 ASTOS that you've completed during the semester. I'm adding here in red, this is all uploaded already. Do not resubmit. Don't resubmit all your ASTOSks, but then do a short ASTOSK report. It says write a short explanation focusing on the skills learned and answer the questions that follow. Describe the 4 ASTOSks that you did, explaining what they were about and what was expected of you. That's just for 1 mark. Again, don't go on about it. And remember, this is 5 marks out of over 300 marks. Okay, because it's 5 marks out of the 100 here, and that 100 counts for 35 of the total. So it's a very low weight of marks that we're dealing with here. So keep this short and simple. Explain what's required. Provide a reason why you had chosen these 4 ASTOSks. And again, that might not make sense, because I offered 5 ASTOSks, and giving a reason to me is not really that useful. I mean, those were the 5 ASTOS you were given. It's more to say which ones you kind of enjoyed most. In fact, they've changed this question. In previous assignments, they said, which ASTOS did you enjoy doing the most? And that would probably be a better way. So if you want to answer that, I'm quite happy with that. What new knowledge did you acquire in doing the ASTOS? What hard and soft skills have you learned through all the work completed on the semester, not just the ASTOSs? Okay, so that's your Task discussion. Pretty short and simple. Don't dwell on it forever. Any questions around this? And again, I mean, I didn't give hectic feedback on Task because most of them, the three quizzes were self-marking, and I gave very brief feedback by email to the other things. Let me just see what the comment is coming in here. All good, all good. Okay, great. So then let's go back to this question here. So that's question 3. Question 4, the last question for 10 marks. And again, 10 marks is fairly low weight. This report is done in 2 parts. The first part, and it's not listed as A and B, but I'm just making it clear that there are 2 sections to this question. The first is to answer the 5 questions on page 18 at the top or the middle of page 18. Then part B is to scan the rubric at the bottom of page 18 and write in what score you think you would score yourself with. So you've got to mark yourself on this self-reflection rubric, and you scan that and you send it in as part of your submission for this reflection report. Okay. Now, sorry, I'm jumping around here. The questions that are asked are the following. How would you define reflection? Okay, so how would you define what is reflection? And it's reflection in the context of doing a course and learning from what you've learned. Okay, I've had some students when they've asked what's the definition of reflection, they say it's standing in front of a mirror and seeing your own image. That is not what reflection means in this context. Okay, yes, it's technically the right definition of reflection, but that's in a literal sense. What does reflection mean in the context of academic learning? And not just academic learning, but any life experience. Then what did you learn from completing tasks 1 and 2? That's what was submitted in April and May. What did you learn from having to correct tasks 1 and 2 as per the feedback from your lecturer? What did you learn from having to use the updated task 1 and 2 to complete your final POE task? Because that might have helped. Now, in this case, that's not really going to make sense because there's very little, if anything, that you're using going into the final tasks. They haven't thought through this question carefully. The other group that I'm doing, the last part of the assignment builds, whereas this isn't, it's the same assignment, but you're doing a risk register, which is an item on its own. And so improving the elements from task 1 and 2 won't really make a difference to doing your risk register in this thing. But again, answer for it for what it's worth. And then did all the ICE tasks, did all the tasks, including your final POE, help you to understand how a project may be managed and administered from beginning to end? As it says here, provide a well thought out reason for your answer. In other words, do some reflecting, do some thinking through this course. What did you pick up? What did you learn? These questions are to guide your discussion. I'm not going to mark your reflection point for point here. I'm more looking for a well thought out reflection exercise. Think through, what did you pick up from this course? What did you enjoy and benefit from? What was the experience like for you in doing this? And have you learned about projects in a significant and meaningful way? And it's to help you reflect, to think back on this course. Okay, so that's the self-reflection thing. Any questions on that? Okay, if not, then I'm going to just give one more slide, which is on referencing. I'm not going to repeat stuff I've said before about referencing, because you guys can go back and see the YouTube videos on it. You can see my previous comments and previous Collab sessions that we've had. All I'm going to put in relation to referencing are the kind of requirements. You must have in-text reference, even if it's author name and year of publication of the textbook underneath your risk register table, whatever else it is you're submitting. In other words, where did you learn about this? Where did you get the format for a risk register from? Where did you get the format for doing the ICE task network diagram or whatever it is that you did? So you must have in-text referencing, and there must be at least a few of them, at least 4 or 5 through your assignment there. Where did you, if you're looking at specific risks like external risks or financial risks, where did you learn what a financial risk is? Did you do some Googling or reference the web page that gave you some idea of what a financial risk is on a project? Okay, so within that section of the risk register table, just in brackets, put the website, author or organization name and date. Okay, then your reference list at the end of your assignment must have at least 3 works or sources listed in it. And then if you have any in-text references, that work that you list must appear in your reference list. A number of students are still having an in-text reference, and then there's no mention made of that work in the reference list at the end. So what I'm saying is any in-text reference that you give must be included fully formatted properly within your reference list. Okay. And what I'm saying is failure to provide both in-text references and a list of references at the end of your document will result in 10% being deducted in future courses. If you go into 2nd or 3rd year courses and so on, or 2nd semester courses, and you do further courses with the Varsity College, you don't any longer get 10% deducted. You actually get reported to Varsity College. You get 1 chance to correct it. And after that, if you make the same mistake a 3rd time, you basically get 0 for your assignment, because they take academic integrity very seriously. It's part of being a student. It's part of being within an academic environment. You recognize the work that other people have done before you. You're not just the genius dreaming this all up on yourself. You've done some research. You've done some work. Where did you find this? So you must have in-text references and a list of references. If you don't have either of those, 10% gets chopped off your mark. So if you get a mark of 55% and you haven't put your references in properly, then your mark is dropped to 45%. 10% gets taken off. If there are other less serious referencing errors, then 5% gets deducted. And again, in future, in other courses that you do going forward with Varsity College, there's more serious repercussions because you've had a chance to learn during this semester and the courses you're doing. But from what I can see, you guys seem to be cool with your referencing, but it's a general guideline and caution to everybody. Any questions on referencing?
No, I'm all good, thanks, Tim. I just read one of your comments in my last submission where you said that I should do the in-text referencing there. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, it's cool. I'm glad you picked that up, and it's because some students don't even. I mean, I make the comment if you haven't done your referencing properly, I make a comment about it, and some students don't even notice it, and the subsequent submissions are equally bad in terms of referencing. So well done. It's a good lesson to learn. Now, I mean, Varsity College has changed a bit over the last few years. They didn't used to worry too much about it, specifically at undergrad level. But for some reason, I think it has to do with academic status and standing in the academic community. They've decided, and not just them, probably other institutions as well, have said that right from 1st year level and even standalone courses that you do with Varsity College, you're in an academic environment, you must comply with and attain to good academic behavior, good academic standards. And not everyone becomes an academic. Not everyone goes into the academic world and becomes a professor or a master's or PhD student. Obviously, at those levels, it gets very particular, very serious. But what they're trying to do is instill in us the understanding that academic integrity is an important part of life.
Yes, of course.
Within an academic context. So we should, and you know what, it crops up occasionally in the music world. somebody will sue somebody for theft of their tune or their lyrics or both, and then it ends up going to court, and that has to do with, you know, it's not academic theft, but it's copyright, and you get accusations made. It's a little more difficult in the musical world because, you know, there's only 12 notes to play with, so there's bound to be some overlap, but that gets picked up pretty quickly. Same in any area of life. We should be humble enough to acknowledge our sources. Cool. Well, that's it from my side. Well done to you guys on what you've done so far, and I wish you well in the coming 8 or 9 days until final submission date. Any final comments or questions from you guys before we sign off?
I'm all good. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. You broadened my understanding on project management quite a lot in the past few weeks. But yeah, cool. Thank you so much. And then it was nice meeting you. Nice having to deal with this subject with you and going through all the work and stuff, you know. But yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for the feedback. Appreciate it. Go well. Shanice, you all good there? Thanks.
I'm all good, Tim. Thank you so much for all your feedback and all your help and everything. It's really come a long way. So yeah, I'm actually enjoying this.
Well done to you guys.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, good stuff, guys.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
bye.
Bye.